Hello, I am back after a couple weeks off. Um, yeah, wasn't really a planned absence, but I'm back now, and I'm back to talk about, as you can see, that handsome face right below me. Gonna talk about good old HK. Um, I I did make a couple of notes for the last few episodes that I didn't do full recaps for, so I'm gonna go over those as well, and then I'm gonna properly recap this most recent episode. But yeah, the reason that I was away is that my dad died. He died on October 10th, and been bereaving, dealing with all kinds of stuff, including his memorial services. So that's why I haven't been around for a few weeks. I hope, because I know my first two videos got more views than I was expecting. So anyone who was into those and is disappointed that I didn't the last make ones for the last few episodes. That's why I didn't, and I hope you understand. But I'm back now, and I decided I want to do this tonight because I could use the distraction. So I'm going to start off with the episode where there were 18 people still in the competition, but that number dropped quite a bit by the end. This was the second time in 2 seasons, no less, that three chefs left in one episode. Chase quit, and then Paul was eliminated, and Elena was eliminated. Elena kind of surprised me. I thought she was getting an edit that was indicating she'd stick around for a while. The first time three chefs left in one episode, it was two withdrawals and an elimination. This time it was vice versa. One withdrawal, two eliminations. And just, we lost five people in 2 episodes. Like, it was like early days of The Walking Dead, and just, they were killing everybody. But both teams lost that night. And the best of the worst for the red team, I chose to be Anaya for her voice, and Chris for his performance on the appetizer station. As far as Paul and Elena being eliminated, Ramsey made the right decisions, but Alexandra showed her total lack of class, and she turns out to be a bit of a Karen. Next episode, the first note I made, sick of Alexandra's victim noises. And in the previous episode, I was really impressed with Anaya, with the way she kind of stepped up and led the team. But she really kind of lost me a bit in this episode with how she used her punishment pass. She used it just on the person who beat her in the challenge. Like that's kind of low, I think. So was not crazy about that, and like she was kind of gloating about it during the rewards. Just really unnecessarily mean, it felt. So I didn't really like that. I talked about Alexandra's victim noises, and Bradley also has a bit of a victim mentality. He and Anthony had a bit of a disagreement during service, and Bradley thought he was out to get him, but Anthony was clearly not acting malicious in any way. I thought the red team was actually going to win this service, but it was the blue team. And this note I made, this was the first time that the first winning team of a season after starting with joint losses is the blue team. Every other time, every other season where the first service ended in a joint loss, the first team to actually win a service was the red team. But this time it was blue. Best of the best, I picked Jaden and Henry. again, the appetizers. And best of the worst, I picked Jada because she really kind of took the lead. Kat was eliminated. Ramsey made the right decision, but Alexandra proved she's still a horrible teammate. And then the next episode, Alexandra was just lucky the red team won. I'll say that. That's the best. I picked Anaya again. She kept the meat station flawless. And best of the worst, I picked Henry because he helped a struggling teammate. And Bradley was eliminated. Ramsey made the right decision. This guy was never going to improve, even after that little pep talk Ramsey gave him. Didn't work. All right. So now that we're all caught up, let's move on to this most recent episode. Start of the episode, there is a dance party in the dorms. Anaya is twerking, and Anthony's dancing real goofy. Lisa likes his energy. So, after that, head on down to the restaurant. They're introduced to a young kid in a suit. And I gotta say, the look on Sydney's face, she might have changed her mind about wanting kids. She she had a really she had a look on her face that indicated she thought this kid was adorable. So kid sits down at the piano and starts playing. Some might say Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Some might say the alphabet song. They are the same. Point is, that's what he starts playing. And then the curtain behind him drops. Well, the curtain behind Ramsey drops. And the Connecticut Symphony Orchestra joins in. And John, preacher's kid, he loves it. Ramsey says that this performance was the elevation of a classic, or just a royalty free song, everybody knows. But their challenge today is to elevate another classic fried chicken. Now, who doesn't like fried chicken? Some of the dishes they make on the show, I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to eat that, but I love fried chicken. So, yeah. John's very excited about this challenge. It was his signature dish, chicken and waffles. It was fried chicken. So they have 45 minutes. They get to work. Henry tells sous chef James that he's doing it Southern style with a bourbon honey glaze. He says he's got this, being from Texas. In my head, I'm like, Texas is known more for beef than chicken, but we shall see. Georgia and like Alabama, that's where the good chicken is, the good fried chicken. Texas, you go there for beef. Anyway, Anaya tells Michelle she's doing buttermilk traditional fried chicken with sweet potato puree. Chris is doing a Korean fried chicken, which he's never done before, including Asian sides, including fake kimchi. I don't quite know why he couldn't make real kimchi. I mean, maybe it just takes too long. I don't know. I'm not a food expert. I just really like this show. By the way, hello to my first viewer. Thank you for joining. Kara Marie doing Korean. Sorry, I got a text. I lost my place. Kara Marie is doing Korean chicken and waffles with sake, miso, and gochujang quick pickled cucumber. And I think she always does too much, which she kind of does. Well, does too much, and it comes back to bite her. John boasts that he eats fried chicken 3 times a week. I don't blame him. He is deboning a whole chicken for a roulade, which is like a stuffed thing. He says it's high risk, high reward, but doesn't know if it can be done in a fryer. Lisa is making a coffee rubbed lollipop of chicken. Notes her mom is Cuban and always had coffee around, and she wants to do something different from everyone else. Which, that's something you should always be trying to do on this show. You don't want to just Eat yet another dish, because then it's like, so what? Time's running down. Anthony thinks John is a psychopath trying to do a roulade in 45 minutes, but it'll be impressive if he pulls it off. Time runs out. Everyone gets their dishes done. Uh, we don't have anyone drop it like Jaden did in the last episode. So Ramsey introduces the guest judge of the day. He's the CEO of Church's Texas Chicken, Joe Goose. I thought it was just Church's Chicken. I didn't know it was Church's Texas Chicken. I've never been, but I've seen them around. I think there's one near me somewhere, like in my state, and I've just like passed by it or something. But Anaya notes that he is an expert on fried chicken, so the pressure is on, and he's here to rate the dishes, scale 1 to 5, which is the usual thing. First up is John with his fried chicken roulade with farm vegetables. Joe is not overly impressed by the presentation. Ramsey asks why he did a roulade. John says he wanted to do something he's never done before. Chicken's dry. That's a shame. So he gets a 2. Sorry. The next up is Ellie. She's proud of her chicken. It's a caper and dill pickle brined fried chicken and fried prosciutto. Joe says it doesn't pop, and she also gets a 2. Anthony notes he's opened a fried chicken restaurant, but points out that Joe's a tough critic. He makes a southern fried chicken thigh, boneless and skinless. It's cream corn with Anaheim and bird's eye chili. Joe says that the chicken is well done, but the breading looks more interesting than the flavor. And he gets a 3. Alexandra makes chicken and morels, like morel mushrooms. Joe says the mushrooms are cold, but the chicken was okay, so she gets a 2. Antonio makes an Asian infused chicken breaded with panko on top of a Japanese yam puree. Joe says it's not differentiated enough. Some people just like big words. Antonio gets a 3. Next up is Anaya. All 4 contestants whose names start with A were in a row. Anthony, Alexandra, Antonio, and now Anaya. Anaya made a brined chicken with sweet potato puree. Says she grew up making fried chicken, so she should know how. Joe says it's got some zip, like spiciness, and gives her a 4. Jaden makes buttermilk and pickle brined chicken with chipotle. He gets a 3. Jada makes a chicken katsu with red eye gravy and maitake mushrooms. Joe likes the chicken, but he thinks it's overpowering. So Jada only gets a 3, which I feel like is lower than Jada normally does in these kinds of challenges, if I recall correctly. But she's been pretty strong so far. Henry made a double breaded chicken thigh with buttermilk brine with pickle juice. Now, I took a look at this thing and thought that's too much breading. And I thought for sure he was going to get knocked. Anyway, it's finished with a tomato bacon jam, and I just realized I spelled bacon wrong making my notes. Joe actually likes how it pops, and Henry gets a 4. Again, what do I know? Up next is Carrie. She's saying she's confident this is the day she finally impresses in a challenge because she hasn't done well in the challenges so far. It's a Korean chicken and waffle. Joe says it's a lot. He would have featured the waffle more, and he notes that it didn't really hold together. And she gets a 1. And she says it makes her feel like a big bag of bleep. So the score is 15-12, with one dish left per team. If Chris gets a 3 or better, the blue team automatically wins. So we did a play on Korean with purple sweet potato fries, kimchi, and pickled radishes. Joe notes the effort, but he sees the chicken isn't all the way cooked. Chris, buddy, you're better than this. Undercooked chicken? Dude, you have the punishment pass. So he gets a 1. So the score 16-12. Lisa needs a 5 to win. Because he's been such a tough critic, she's worried that the coffee will make it bitter, and she didn't do a breading like everyone else did. So she's worried about what he's going to say about her dish. So she made a drumstick, flash fried in cornstarch with a coffee rub. Joe notes there's no breading, but he says you can see how moist it is, and it's well done. And she gets a 5. The red team wins yet again. The red team winning streak continues. And there are 13 people left. 7 on the red team, 6 on the blue team. One person on the red team did not appear in this challenge, Sydney. And they didn't even show like the discussion where, her teammates were like, nah, this one isn't good enough. We're just going to drop this one. I assume that's what happened, but it just wasn't interesting enough to make TV, I guess. Sydney's another one that got like a pretty big edit early on, but since then she's kind of faded into the background. Even Ellie, who got 0 confessionals in the first 2 episodes, is becoming more prominent than her. So, the first part of the red team's reward is an invite in the future from Joe to the church's chicken lab to like collaborate with his team. Like they're basically going to be having input on the church's chicken menu. So that's kind of a big deal. The red team's reward is zip lining, which, you know, some people would look at that and think, oh, this is going to be awesome. Some people, like Lisa, are afraid of heights. And also lunch at a restaurant at Foxwoods called Cedars Steaks and Oysters. Henry gets a confessional saying, I hope a bird craps on them. There's the Texas attitude, I know. Anyway, Lou's punishment is prepping airline chicken and Frenching lamb bones. I don't know why it's called Frenching, and frankly, I don't know why it's called airline chicken either. Like, do they serve it on a plane? I don't know. I don't get that at all. Anyway, Ramsey asks if Chris wants to use his pass, and he decides, I'm going to stick with my team. And good. I'm sorry, but you can't serve raw chicken and then your team loses the challenge, but then you get to go on the reward. Like, no. If there's one punishment you need to endure, it's this one. I feel like you should only use the punishment pass if you did well in the challenge. And I feel like you should use it to replace the person on the winning team who did the worst out of them. But that's just me. So we see Ellie in the dorm. She's disappointed in herself because it's the lowest she's scored so far in this competition. She says that people want her gone, but Sydney's like, I got your back. And Ellie's grateful for her friendships. Notice how all the women minus Alexandra get along really well? Like Ellie and Sydney have a have a bit of a have a good friendship going on, a good duo. Jada and Anaya bonded immediately. Yeah. So the red team gets to lunch first, and they get a massive feast. Like this is fit for a Viking king. You shouldn't eat before you go ziplining. You might throw up while doing it. So, maybe try not to have too much in there. And while they're eating, Alexander gets a confessional noting the attitude change in the team, but won't get too excited because, she doesn't think it'll last. Again, the women get along fine with each other. They just don't get along with you ever since you started being really obnoxious and mean to them. The call is coming from inside the house, Alexandra. So they get up to the roof, 300 feet up, like over 300 feet. Ellie is terrified. Lisa asks if this is actually a punishment. Sydney is excited. Like, Sydney cannot wait to do this. Lisa says she's scared, but one of her teammates knows she had a kid. And, like, if you did that, you can do this. Like, that's the encouragement. But she powers through, just like they all do. And they all sort of scream and cheer the whole way down and seem like they had a blast. And at the end, Lisa's like what she said basically indicated she's never going ziplining again. Now, I've been ziplining before, but I did not depart from 300 feet up. Okay. I didn't go off a building. I went down a mountain. Like, you kind of start like up on like a platform or maybe in like some kind of tree course. You start up there and you go down and yeah, you're not 300 feet off the ground. Although I did go on one zip line once that might have been almost as long as the one the ladies got to do here. So they're hanging out in the dorms after this. And Tanner notes he's done 3 straight punishments and he is exhausted. Lisa asks what his sous chef's name is. Antonio can't remember. And they literally show Antonio's reaction to day one in the theater. Ramsey introducing sous chef for the blue team, James Avery. They're throwing around names like, is it Jason? And they're like, no, it's not Jason. But they think they remember that Jason was the last blue team sous chef. They also suggest maybe Mike. Nope. And Lisa gets a confessional saying that he should know his sous chef's name. I'm like, you were in the audience too when James was introduced. If you make it far enough, he might be your sous chef at some point. Like if he's the sous chef for when they're the black jacket team. Because typically, I feel like it's usually only one sous chef at that point. Like the other one just kind of disappears until like the final service. Also, this is James's 6th season on this show. Yes, he was gone for a while, but I mean, it's like, do these people know this show that much? Like, do they just know this is a cooking competition, but they never really watched it? I don't know. Something's funny here. I don't know. Good way to remember it, James Avery. Same as the actor who played Uncle Phil on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. They're both big, intimidating, bald guys. So we see some prepping. Both teams were ready to crush it during service. Randy tells Marino to open the doors. People come in, and we got some guests tonight at the chef's tables. At the blue team chef's table, Buddy Valestro of Cake Boss and his kids. Now, I've never watched Cake Boss, but I do know who Buddy is because he appeared on Impractical Jokers once. They, the Jokers did a challenge at his restaurant, his bakery. So, yeah, I know who he is. And he's there with his two kids. At the red chef's table is now I spelled out how to say this last name phonetically. Teresa Giudice of Real Housewives of New Jersey. And another woman, maybe her daughter. I don't really know. To be honest, I couldn't tell you how old Teresa is. She could be 35, she could be 75. I don't know. The amount of work done on her, it's hard to tell. I I've seen her name like typed before. Like I've seen it online. I've never known how to pronounce it until watching this episode because Real Housewives shows like that. That's one realm of reality TV that I've been like, nope, like that in the Jersey Shore type shows, the Bachelor, Bachelorette type shows. Just no, not even gonna attempt to check that stuff out. All right, now stations on appetizers. We got Jade and Anaya in the red kitchen, Chris in the blue kitchen, with a bit of an asterisk there, but I'll get to that. Fish, red team, it's Alexandra and Ellie. Blue team, John and Antonio. Meat station, red team, Sydney and Cara Marie. Blue team, Jaden and Henry. I think. I think Henry was on the meat station, but we didn't really see him during service. He was, the thing is, he was standing in between Jaden on meat and Chris on apps, so he really could have been on either station. But I feel like they sooner put one guy on apps before they put one guy on meat. So that's why I'm fairly sure that Henry was on the meat station with Jaden. And for garnish, it was Lisa for the red team, Anthony for the blue team. So, Red's first ticket. Two risotto, two scallops. Jade is excited to be on the same station as Anaya because she thinks they'll work well together anywhere. They're communicating well with Fish, which is impressive considering Anaya and Alexandra don't like each other very much. Sorry for scratching my nose so much. It's something I can't help doing when I'm streaming. I don't know what it is. Karen Marie calls Jada and Anaya two halves of a whole, a yin and a yang, because of how they work together. And dishes start leaving the kitchen without incident, and Ramsey notes that Jada and Anaya are solid. And they are. They are quite a power duo, I gotta say. So we head over to the blue kitchen. Ramsey tells the men to say hello to the chef's table. John just kind of stays there cooking. Ramsey tells him he'll cover for him and to go over to the chef's table. And Ramsey has to tell him this four times before John finally takes the message and goes over and introduces himself to the chef's table. And John admits in a confessional that he had tunnel vision on that one because he was focusing on his scalps. After that, we see Chris nail the first risotto we see him serve, and the first dishes leave the blue kitchen. Ellie guides Alexandra on what to do with the scallops. Alexandra feels like Ellie is a bit of a micromanager. And I'm just like, gee, wonder why. Maybe. Really, Alexandra, you haven't figured out why no one trusts you. You don't trust them. Why should they trust you? But the food gets out. 1 second. Sorry. Okay. John says that he's taking the lead on fish, and that Antonio wanted to be in a supporting role. Ramsey only wants leading men and women in his movie. And it's at this point I'm starting to think Antonio's time here is limited. He better hope the blue team wins this service. And even then, no guarantees. Been a while since we've seen someone eliminated off the winning team, but it has happened. So John walks up overcooked scallops, and Ramsey reminds him that the way to do it is to just drop them all out in one, he says. Just tilt the pan over, drop them onto napkin, a napkin on a tray, and just do it like that, just so they all come out at once, so they've all cooked the same amount of time. You do it one at a time, and it takes 30 seconds, and they all have different temperatures. Antonio says that John is a deer in headlights right now, and Antonio wants the station to himself. I'm like, maybe say something. He's struggling, you step up. John then brings up raw scallops, from overcooked to raw. Ramsey says, for F's sake. But he tells his kids not to repeat the bad words. Do you think Ramsey might have caught himself with literal children in the room? Because when I say his kids, I mean they were kids. Anyway, the third attempt meets his standards and gets to the dining room. Red moves on entrees. Their first entree is two salmon, two New York strip. Lisa's on garnish, and she's getting confused by all the timing she's hearing, which has Cara Marie a little concerned. And it's at this point that something starts to hit me. Lisa is great in challenges, but we've yet to really see her stand out in a dinner service. Like, usually we go the whole dinner service without seeing her at all. And now that we are actually getting to see her a little bit during service, she's kind of struggling a bit. Karen Marie says that she's waiting on garnish, but Randy says, you're driving the ticket. The proteins have to get to the, I mean, sorry, the garnish has to get to the pass before proteins, but unfortunately this time the proteins get there first. Calls the ladies up. He says they're disconnected, tells them to talk to the weak point, which is garnish. So, moves on to entrees. John asks about halibut, which isn't on this particular order. Anthony notes that John is drenched in sweat, but Antonio is just kind of standing there. And honestly, at this point, Antonio is giving Corbin from last season. Just this tall guy standing around, not talking much, not doing much, just kind of there, just kind of watching. Jaden tries to get tries to talk to Antonio. Antonio doesn't even acknowledge him. Ramsey asks Antonio if he's in the game. Then John brings very clearly burned salmon up. I don't even know why he brought it up. Like I could tell. Like I said, not a food expert, but I could tell that salmon was too far gone. John knows that he's the one taking all the bolts tonight, but he does get the salmon right. The narrator notes that both teams are starting to hit their stride. We even see Lisa. She seems to have gotten the hang of the garnish station. Ramsey calls both teams up and says they're at the exact same point. First to finish wins. The audience applauds. Meanwhile, Anaya is repeatedly saying, give me a knife, give me a knife. That's a very concerning sentence outside of HK. In here, it's fine, but, you know, it does raise one's eyebrows a little bit. Blue has two halibut, two Wellington. Red has two salmon, two Wellington. And Ramsey tells both teams same thing: be precise. The red team meat station needs 10 minutes for the Wellingtons, which has Ellie very worried. Meanwhile, in the blue kitchen, Jaden calls 4 minutes for his Wellingtons. Anthony says he doesn't want to lose a fourth time in a row. Sydney, literally standing by the oven, waiting to take the Wellingtons out. Jaden walks his Wellingtons. Ramsey checks them, cuts to commercial. They're raw and burnt on the outside. Always impressive when someone manages to do that, isn't it? And Jaden, my Massachusetts guy. Come on, buddy. But it still goes back in the oven. Apparently, it can be saved despite being burnt on the outside. So Cara Marie tells Sydney to count to 80 and then walk. Sydney knows all eyes are on her. The salmon gets walked. Meanwhile, over in the blue kitchen, we see Jaden saying the Wellingtons need a minute. Sydney isn't too sure, but she's talked into bringing it up. And there's some chatter on the team like, oh, why would you bring it up if you weren't sure? But it passes. Meets Ramsey standards. Ellie gives Sydney a hug. Sydney goes to the storeroom to kind of calm herself down. She's like, don't have a panic attack right now. And she just kind of talks about like why she's here and her condition. She has Crohn's disease, so it was tough for her to even become a chef, but she did it anyway because it's been her lifelong passion. So it's not Ramsey, but sous chef James that tells the blue team that they lost and that Ramsey wants two nominees. I don't know why Ramsey didn't do this himself. I don't know. The guy has the guy has so many restaurants. He probably was on an important phone call about one of them. Who knows? He probably had a good reason, which is why he let James take care of this one. But yeah, Ramsey wants two nominees. Chris doesn't want to nominate anyone, which is why Chris is my favorite on the blue team. He's clearly just a decent guy. Anthony starts by suggesting John and Jaden as the nominees. And his reasoning for Jaden I thought was a little questionable. Like, you're only as good as the last thing you put up. Like, no. You should look at the whole dinner service. Jaden suggests Antonio because he was just standing around, not really helping. And Anthony, at this point, is starting to be like, you might be right. And John admits that he wished that he had more support. So we get to the nomination ceremony. Henry has asked for the nominees, well, because he's the only guy left on the team that hasn't announced them yet that is definitely not being nominated tonight. First nominee is John for having no clear voice and a shaky start that set the tone for Fish for the night. Second nominee is commercial Antonio for not having a system with John. They both come forward. Ramsey asks what happened. Antonio says there was no communication, which Ramsey finds hard to believe because they were standing next to each other. Antonio says that he should stay because he wants to show Ramsey he belongs there and he's not done. But honestly, just hearing him talk, I'm like, this guy has so little passion in his voice. And at this point, I'm just thinking, there's no way Antonio doesn't leave tonight. But sure, let's hear what John has to say. John says he should stay because he's getting better every day and he'll fight every day. Says it with a lot more passion. Ramsey says it's difficult because they both lost their voices. But in my opinion, there was one person that hasn't really had much of a voice all season, And Ramsey agrees with me and eliminates Antonio for disappearing during service. Antonio regrets not being more vocal, but thinks he did New Hampshire proud. You know, if you want to talk about like famous people from New Hampshire, the most famous person from New Hampshire, I believe, is Adam Sandler. So it's it's hard to take him down any more notches. Hmm, that's not fair. I know Adam Sandler can be funny, and I know he can be a good actor. It's just like so many times, it's like, do you even want to? But Ramsey is not done. He sends John back in line, but tells him to wake up. He calls Jada up and asks for her jacket. Her teammates look stunned. And I'm just like, go back to what I said earlier. I mean, did I even say it this way? Like, well, yeah, I kind of implied it with no one knows who James is. Maybe they haven't really watched this show too much. I'm like, if they really think Jada's going home right now, then they haven't watched the show at all. Because there are 7 people on the red team and 5 on the blue team. And Ramsey always evens the teams. Well, okay, maybe not always, but at this point in the game, he tends to even the teams. So that's exactly what's happening. She's going to the blue team. Anaya looks devastated. And Alexandra, of all people, comforts her. Ramsey tells the blue team they have a leader now, and he doesn't want to witness their downward spiral any longer. Closing remarks, Jada takes the swap as a compliment and says if Ramsey wants a leader, then she'll give him one. John is happy to have her on the team. Anaya is shown running ahead because, like, I feel like it's usually the losing team that leaves first and then the winning team behind. But Jada was sent to the losing team, so she left with them. So Anaya just runs ahead to Jada, who's at the front of the line, basically, and gives her a hug goodbye. And in her confessional, she's very mad that she got swapped. And the promo is indicating that Anaya is starting to possibly unravel a bit. Yes, it could be manipulative editing. In fact, it does look like quite possibly there's like some grave mistake that happens during service. And the camera is kind of focusing on Alexandra a couple times, so it could be Alexandra's grave mistake. But Anaya is shown getting snippy with people during service. So, yeah, she's visibly agitated. And that's not nothing. All right. Now, the question is Jada needs to switch to the blue team. Is this going to be the start of something good? Because we've seen people that were doing well on their original team get switched and then they just fall apart. Like we saw it last year with Lulu, saw it with Hassan in season 15. But at the same time, we saw the first 2 winners of the show, Michael and Heather. They were swapped off fairly dominant teams to the struggling team. And then once they got there, that team started to do a lot better. Like Michael went from blue to red, Heather went from red to blue, and just changed the game for both of those teams very much. So yeah, we shall see. I feel pretty good about Jada. I don't think we're gonna have another one like Lulu last year. But with Lulu, it was like she gets to the blue team just while they that triple elimination from last season. Well, not an elimination, but the one where 3 people left. They all left from the blue team. So yeah, Ramsey had to even the teams up at that point. And Lulu had been doing well on the red team up to that point, but she gets to the blue team. Everyone on the blue team starts doing better, and Lulu just falls apart, and she only comes in 10th place. So, yeah, you never can tell. And that's what I like about this show. All right, best of the best. I'm giving it to Jada and Anaya because that was just a flawless start. They really did work together well. And there was a little bit of me that's wondering if Ramsey broke them up to try and actually cripple the red team a little bit. He's like, they're just going to dominate this whole season. I want to actually make this a little bit more competitive. Because I said this before when I talked about my draft team. Did I talk about my draft team? No, I didn't. Well, I mentioned that there's a lot of really strong women this season, and that I think there's going to be um, a female winner for the first time in a while. At least I'm pretty sure I talked about it. I don't know. I don't have a photographic memory about this stuff. I'm not like Sherlock Holmes. Point is, there's a lot of strong women on the red team, and Ramsey might have just sent the strongest one to the blue team, so that might even things up a bit. We shall see. And best of the worst, for the same reason I picked Jada and Anaya, I'm picking Chris. Good performance on the appetizer station. But with him, he was alone, so there's like that extra thing there, that extra bit of noteworthiness, in my opinion. And frankly, he was the only one shown excelling on the blue team tonight. I say tonight, it was 2 nights ago, and it was filmed a year ago, probably. Yeah, I think it was filmed in 2024. Anyway, he made up for his performance in the challenge, where he served raw chicken. Finally, did Ramsey make the right decision? Yeah, he did. Antonio was just consistently like a statue. He was not much of a competitor. He was clearly not going to win. Wasn't ready for the job. Antonio wasn't the guy. So, yeah. Honestly, probably doesn't seem like a great loss. I'm sure in no time Antonio will be completely forgotten about. All right. So, that is my stream. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. If you're watching this on YouTube, I also appreciate it. And I'm hopefully back now. Like I said, bit of a crazy time in my life right now, but doing this, like to give myself some kind of normalcy, I that's what I want to do. Just to, like I said earlier, distract myself. But yeah, thanks for watching. And by the way, if you really want a more in-depth look of the episodes I just kind of glossed over, hellskitchen.fandom.com. Very in-depth wiki. So yeah, that'll do the job I didn't do for 3 weeks. All right. Okay. That'll do it for this stream. Thank you for watching. Peace out.